Welcome to the Deep Dive. We unpack fascinating stories, look for insights that might help you on your own journey. Today we're doing a really deep dive actually into a new book. It's powerful, very personal, and it challenges how we think about mental health and healing. We're looking at Goodbye, Old Friend, A Journey Through Depression into Light. It's by Ruby Gyang. She's this incredible Nigerian creative, entrepreneur, mother, and it's more than just her story. It feels like a guide for anyone who's faced that kind of darkness or felt misunderstood or just wondered if there's another way to heal.
Yeah, what's so compelling, I think, is how Ruby's story connects her own very personal struggle with these bigger cultural and spiritual things going on around her. So, our mission today really is to explore that unique journey. We want to pull out practical tools, maybe some profound perspectives on how things like faith, community, and professional support can actually work together, work hand in hand against depression. We'll get into her lowest moments, but also her amazing breakthroughs, hopefully offering insights not just for people going through it, but also importantly to the loved ones walking alongside them, because
Yeah.
that's tough too.
Okay, absolutely. Let's unpack this journey then. Starting right at the beginning, really, with the seeds of this long-term depression planted way earlier than she even realized. So picture Ruby at 19. She's like full of these huge dreams, studying business and music in Western Europe. And she worked so hard for it, saving money, dealing with those super slow internet cafes in Algeria back in the early 2000s. Remember those? Her mom and sisters supported her massively, even sold their gold, for the application fee. And the amazing thing is, she got in.
Oh, wow. That's a huge victory, right? Which makes you think, what happens when that peak moment is immediately followed by just the worst setback? Because her father, apparently suspicious about the application somehow, just flat out said, no, you are not going, just like that. And then the kicker is, years later, she finds out that close relatives had actually actively sabotaged her chance. Just, wow.
Yeah.
Talk about betrayal.
Oh, the impact was just devastating. You can imagine. She felt her dream wasn't just deferred, it was crushed. Like a vital part of her just withered. It created this deep bitterness towards her father, obviously, and she calls it unprocessed trauma. Basically, these really painful things that hadn't been dealt with emotionally or psychologically. She says it was like an open door for something darker to take root. And she even quotes Proverbs 13.1. Hope deferred makes the heart sick. And her heart, she says, was sick for a very, very long time after that.
And that idea of trauma rotting, it's not just a metaphor, is it? Clinically, we see that when deep pain is suppressed, it doesn't just disappear. It can fester. It shows up as chronic stress, anxiety, even physical symptoms. It kind of frames your whole view of life. Her silence around the betrayal, not being able to talk about it or process it, became almost as damaging as the event itself. That's the open door she talks about.
Yeah.
It really highlights how important it is to have safe ways to express these things, which, as she notes, isn't always easy in every culture.
But even with that huge disappointment, that wound, life took a surprising turn in 2002. Ruby joined this really vibrant church choir in Jazza. At first she thought, okay, this is just temporary, something to do before my real life starts overseas. But she found community there. And she really fell in love with contemporary music. It became a training ground for her voice.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating is how she sees it now. Like, God uses our family to redirect our steps, even when we do not realize we need redirecting. Her mother even joined the church with them, which she describes as a quiet, powerful decision. Huge support. So this community, it gave her space to grow, right? She started experimenting with sounds, studio work. She was evolving from just a singer into, well, an artist. It was a detour, definitely not the plan, but it was shaping her in really important ways.
And that detour kept leading somewhere. She had this temporary relationship with another musician, but that led her to meet his older brother, Jude Abaga. M.I. Abaga, right? A big name in Nigerian music. He saw their talent, organized them into a proper crew, she says, became her first producer, her label head. And that creative partnership, interestingly, lasted way longer than the romance. It really shaped her career.
But even with this new path, this new purpose, that lost dream, it lingered like a shadow, as she puts it. She felt cheated, like she was living a smaller version of what she was meant to do. Still, music was her lifeline. It gave her something to pour myself into, something that felt like forward motion, even if it wasn't the direction she'd originally planned. It's a great example of finding solace, finding progress, even when things go off track. She was finding her voice again, literally and figuratively.
Then comes 2004. Another huge shock. An unplanned pregnancy. She's 19, unmarried. Now, her boyfriend and her parents, including her father this time, they actually rallied around her, gave her crucial support. But the church community, Well, the judgment wasn't spoken, but it was felt. It led her to feel betrayed and hurt all over again, but in a different way.
Right, and this really highlights like crucial point about different responses, doesn't it? How culture and community impact mental health in these vulnerable moments. She found acceptance in her music circle, but the shame from the church was, well, palpable. She talks about that silence around mental health in Nigeria, how often it gets brushed off as, spiritual attacks or weak faith or curses.
Hmm.
Instead of being seen as a health issue needing compassion, that just adds layers of isolation, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And talk about pressure. Just hours after giving birth in November 2004, Ruby was back at university taking an exam. She got a B. I mean, it shows incredible determination, but wow, also the immense strain she was under. It was only years later she realized she was experiencing postpartum depression. She described it as an emotional fog so heavy it blurred everything. It made it really hard to connect with her baby daughter for years. Such a clear example of how external pressures can just hide internal suffering.
And that fog, it didn't lift quickly. It stuck around through her university years, 2004 to 2008, made it almost impossible to focus. She failed exams, eventually had to make the painful choice to drop out. Can you imagine feeling utterly alone among your
Yeah.
classmates, unable to even explain the internal battle you're fighting? That period really cemented her isolation, even while she kept up this front of being fine. It just created this deeper split between inside and outside.
Right. Okay, let's jump forward to 2010. An opportunity pops up. Her producer, Jita Baga, calls her to Lagos. Pursue music professionally. Her mother encourages her, gives her that push. And Ruby makes this incredibly tough decision to leave her daughter with her mom in Jos. She saw it as a necessary step, though, to follow her own dream, but also, importantly, to set an example for her daughter.
Yeah, and what's really striking is the prep work she did before that move. It wasn't just packing bags. She talks about working with a mentor, getting physically fit, but also doing serious, deep mental work, healing old wounds, building confidence. So she wasn't just like running towards the dream desperately. She was intentionally walking into it as someone who had done the work to be worthy of it. That really speaks to the power of preparing yourself internally for external shifts, doesn't it?
Hmm. And Lagos initially felt like this wave of possibility. Her song Good Man took off in 2011, huge success. It even softened her father's view a bit. But you know how the music industry is. It's fickle. The momentum didn't last forever. The buzz died down. And by early 2013, that familiar darkness started creeping back in. But this time, she says, with a force I had never experienced before.
And this is where things get really intense, actually. She describes how her body literally started speaking the language of my pain. It wasn't just feeling bad, it was physical. A racing heart, this burning feeling in her stomach, blinding migraines, her skin dramatically darkening. And maybe the most terrifying thing for her, her voice, her actual singing voice, started cracking, disappearing. Plus, these episodes of feeling like she was physically falling into a dark, bottomless well, even in broad daylight. Classic psychosomatic stuff, really showing that deep mind-body link.
That must have been absolutely terrifying. Your voice, your identity as a singer just failing you and having no idea why. Her voice coach, Franklin Chude, gently pointed out the connection. He said, the state of your emotions, the frame of your mind, if you're sad, it will affect how you sing. A frightening thing to hear, I bet, but also maybe clarifying.
Exactly. And then in 2013, a doctor finally puts a name to it. Ruby, you're depressed. And that diagnosis, she says, was both this huge relief, like, okay, this is real, I'm not just weak, but also a terrifying confirmation of how bad things were. But it shifted her understanding. Fundamentally, it wasn't a moral failing, not a spiritual weakness. It was a condition, a real illness. And that knowledge, even in the midst of all that pain, it offered this tiny, fragile bit of hope, something to work with, even as she dealt with another huge blow. Her father passed away in August 2013.
Wow. So the next few years, 2014 to 2016, she calls it a cruel cycle of hope and shattering disappointment. Good Man blew up again unexpectedly in 2014. Massive success. And for a time, the depression just vanished. Such relief. But then in 2015, she gets absorbed into a larger record label, gets kind of sidelined, her momentum stalls again. And that triggered the depression, she says, in ways I had never experienced before.
Yeah, it really brings up that question about external validation, doesn't it? Especially when your identity is so tied up in your work, your art. What happens when that validation disappears? She describes this period as just relentless mental and spiritual torment. She felt she was under unmistakable spiritual attacks, hearing thoughts like, kill yourself, die, you are a failure, just agonizing stuff, rolling on the floor, screaming silently, Jesus help me. It's a brutal picture of that internal battle.
And the isolation must have been crushing. People around her, maybe meaning well, but saying things like she was lazy or full of self-pity or needed to pray harder or deal with sin. Those kinds of comments, she explains, just made it worse, deepened the despair. But her friend Tota Kafang, she mentions, was just there, consistently supportive, quiet presence, didn't judge, just offered companionship. Sometimes that's all you need.
Hmm. Then in 2016, she's desperate, looking for answers beyond what doctors or conventional religious advice was offering. She Googles depression and finds this article, "Depression is a spirit. It must be fought with the word of God."
Hmm.
Now, for Ruby, this specific way of framing it was the big aha moment. It clicked for her. It let her see the depression not as part of her, like a flaw in her character, but as the separate thing, an entity outside me, harassing me.
Hmm.
And that perspective shift was huge. It empowered her to actually fight back, you know? It changed her from victim to warrior in her own mind.
That's a massive shift. And it changed everything for her approach. She started studying the Bible differently, not just for comfort, but like gathering ammunition, using verses Psalm 27, Psalm 23, Jeremiah 29, like actual weapons. So when she felt that entity attack again, she confronted it directly in pidgin English, which is so powerful in that context, saying something like, "If I slap you, eh?" Like a real challenge. And she says, "I felt the thing turn around and run off." A profound moment of taking back control, fighting for her own soul. So her healing journey then unfolds from 2016 to 2021. And like most healing, it wasn't a straight line, right? There were setbacks, but there were also these fundamental changes happening. She still had financial struggles, which could easily have derailed things. But this one Bible verse, Psalm 23.3, "He restoreth my soul," it hit her like a thunderclap. It sparked this real hope for becoming whole again.
Yeah, she describes her soul feeling fractured, affecting her will, her emotions, her mind, her imagination, just feeling broken into pieces. And she talks about this painstaking process, which she attributes to God, of putting those pieces back together, making something stronger, more whole than before. Those Bible verses she collected weren't just words, they became like medicine. She'd speak them out loud. It was like spiritual and mental reprogramming to fight the darkness. It shows this amazing integration of faith as a practical tool for mental health.
And after years of just feeling numb, around 2019, she started feeling this quiet grace emerge, like a thawing. And this small shift got amplified when two friends came back into her life, Reinhard Tega and Julchit Dadi. They'd done some kind of transformative mindset training, and they just kept telling her consistently, "There is more, there is better. You have not seen your best days."
And this part is really insightful, I think, especially for anyone looking for change. Their help wasn't just, feel-good encouragement. It was practical, strategic. They gave her tools, books, even got her into a 6-week training program, but they made her invest in it, have skin in the game. They pushed her to change, to actually believe she could transform, even when she felt hopeless. Their words became like anchors, slowly rebuilding that hope she thought was gone, letting her imagine a future again, maybe not perfect, but purposeful. It really shows the power of intentional community and structured self-help.
Then, as she's healing, her pastor says something that really clicks. Don't waste a trial.
Uh-huh.
And she starts to see all those years of struggle, the depression, the rejection, the shame, not as lost time, but as threads. Threads that God, the master weaver, as she calls him, was weaving into something beautiful, something meaningful.
That concept is so powerful, isn't it? Whether you share her faith perspective or not, it resonates. She connects it to scriptures about testing producing endurance, about power being perfected in weakness, about God providing a way through. She realized God was shaping something in me, transforming the pain, the industry letdowns, taught her to find worth internally, not externally, the money struggles, taught her about community, vulnerability, the depression itself. It broke open the hard places in my heart so God could fill them with his light. Even the silence she endured became space to hear a whisper. Every setback, every rejection, she sees it as the weaver's hand preparing her for something more.
It's an incredible way to reframe adversity, to see how all that pain, the lost scholarship, the PPD, the career setbacks, even cruel words, it was all working together, in her view, to build her character, refine her voice.
Absolutely. So what's the takeaway for us listening to this? Ruby's message is strong. Make your pain count. Let your trials have purpose. She encourages us to put our own broken thread in the hands of the master weaver, to let our mess become our message. Because, as she says so clearly, on the other side of your testing is a story that will set someone else free. It's about seeing our struggles not as dead ends, but as vital parts of our story, sources of strength.
And we can't finish this deep dive without talking about the people who support those struggling. That different kind of pain, she calls it, watching someone you love suffer in silence. She actually dedicates a whole bonus chapter to loved ones. It was inspired by her sister Ashi saying, I lost a chance to have been an ally for you. That's poignant.
It really brings up that vital question. How do you support someone with depression, especially if you don't fully get it? And Ruby's core message here is simple, but profound. You don't have to understand it. You don't have to fix it. You just need to be there. She says, presence heals more than pressure ever will. That's a huge shift for people who feel like they need to jump in with solutions.
Yeah, and she gives really clear advice on what not to say. Things like, just pray about it, or you're too strong for this, snap out of it, or that dismissal is just a spiritual attack, fast more.
Oh,
Those phrases, she says, they land like wounds. They minimize the reality of depression as this huge battle affecting mind, body, and soul. They just push the person further away.
exactly. Instead, she offers really practical, compassionate things you can do. One, be consistent. Show up even when they push you away. Your steady presence matters. Two, hold space without judgment. Let them talk, vent, cry, whatever, without criticism or advice unless asked. Three, educate yourself about depression. Understand what it actually is. Four, ask open questions. Not just you okay, but deeper things like, how has your heart been lately? Or what's feeling heavy today? Five, encourage professional help gently. Offer support in finding help, don't force it. Six, pray with and for them, but as comfort, as shared hope, not a lecture. And crucially, she reminds supporters, you're not responsible for their healing. You need your own support, your own boundaries so you don't burn out. It's about being a sustainable, compassionate companion.
Ruby Gang's journey, wow. From such deep anguish, personal and spiritual, to finding her purpose, finding light, it's just an incredible story of resilience, faith, connection. It really shows that healing isn't some neat, straight line. It's messy, and sometimes the light comes back in ways you never expect, through people or detours you didn't see coming.
Absolutely. And connecting it back to the bigger picture, her way of weaving together faith, community, and professional mental health, help that feels revolutionary, especially in places where mental health is still so stigmatized, so hidden. Her message is really a powerful call to break that silence, to seek help and to understand that maybe our deepest wounds can become doorways to transformation, not just for us, but for others we might help.
Yeah, like she says right at the end in her epilogue, the darkness did not win. It tried, but it did not win, and it will not win over you.
Yeah.
She leaves us with this challenge, this invitation. Do not waste the trial. Do not silence your story. Do not dim your light just to survive. Powerful words.
So maybe the thought for you listening today is to think about your own past pains. How might that master weaver be working with your own flawed fabric? Those detours, disappointments, struggles, maybe they're being woven into something unique, something strong. How could your struggles, whether they're your own or about supporting someone else, actually become the foundation for your deepest strength, your purpose? Because as Ruby's story shows us so vividly, your story is not over. Your healing has a name. This is not the end. This is the beginning of light.